Imagine living 10,000 years ago. There were no banks, no stock markets, no investing apps, and certainly no financial advisors telling people what to do with their money. Life was simple, but it was also difficult. Every day was focused on survival. People hunted, fished, gathered food, built shelters, and tried to make it through another season. In the middle of this prehistoric world lived a caveman named Rocky. He wasn't the strongest hunter in the village, and he wasn't the smartest either. He was simply an ordinary caveman trying to improve his life. Like everyone else around him, Rocky dreamed of becoming wealthy. In his world, wealth was measured in stone donuts, large circular stones with a hole carved through the center that served as money. The more stone donuts someone owned, the richer they were considered to be.
Every morning before sunrise, Rocky left his cave carrying his spear and hunting gear. Some days were productive and rewarding, while others were frustrating and dangerous. Yet, regardless of how difficult the work became, Rocky kept pushing himself because he believed the solution to every financial problem was earning more stone donuts. At the end of a good week, he might earn 20 stone donuts. During an excellent week, he could earn even more.
As the years passed, Rocky became increasingly frustrated. He was doing everything he had been told to do. He worked hard, stayed disciplined, avoided unnecessary risks, and spent most of his days doing productive work. By all appearances, he should have been moving closer to wealth. Yet every time he looked around the village, he felt as though he was standing still while someone else was moving forward. The harder he worked, the more confusing the situation became.
The problem was that no matter how much he earned, the result was always the same. His stone donuts disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived. Some were spent on food, others were spent on tools, repairs, decorations, or small luxuries that seemed important at the time. Before long, the pouch that had once been full was empty again, forcing Rocky to start the process all over from the beginning. As the years passed, Rocky noticed something troubling. He was working harder than ever before, yet his life seemed completely unchanged. He was earning more stone donuts than he had earned in the past, but he never felt wealthier. Every month looked almost identical to the month before. Stone donuts came in, stone donuts went out, and very little remained behind. At first, Rocky assumed this was normal. After all, everyone around him seemed to live the same way. But eventually, he began noticing something that didn't fit the pattern. While most villagers struggled to keep up with daily expenses, one caveman appeared to be moving in the opposite direction. His wealth grew larger every year. His assets expanded across the village, and somehow more stone donuts seemed to flow toward him without requiring the same exhausting effort everyone else accepted as normal. The cave belonged to a caveman named Brug, and for as long as Rocky could remember, Brug had been one of the wealthiest people in the village. Rocky eventually became fascinated by Brug's daily routine. Instead of focusing on his own work, he started paying attention to what happened around the wealthy caveman. What he discovered surprised him. Villagers regularly gave stone donuts to Brug, but not because they were being generous. Every payment had a reason behind it. Some families paid to live in caves that Brug owned. Hunters paid to use storage space. Merchants paid to operate from locations controlled by Brug. Even some farmers gave him a portion of their profits in exchange for using land that belonged to him.
The more Rocky observed, the more a strange pattern began to emerge. Brug wasn't receiving stone donuts because he was working harder than everyone else. He was receiving stone donuts because he owned things that other people needed. The payments continued whether he was actively working or not. While Rocky had to spend every day trading his time for money, Brug had somehow built a system where money flowed toward him through ownership. For the first time in his life, Rocky began looking at stone donuts differently. In the past, every stone donut represented something he could buy: a better meal, a sharper spear, a more comfortable life. But now, after spending weeks observing Brug and the way wealth moved through the village, Rocky started seeing money as a tool rather than a reward. The goal was no longer to spend stone donuts. The goal was to turn stone donuts into something that could produce even more stone donuts in the future. At first, the idea sounded exciting. Rocky imagined himself becoming wealthy within a few months. He pictured a larger cave, more free time, and a growing pile of stone donuts sitting in the corner of his home. But reality turned out to be much less exciting than his imagination. The first challenge appeared almost immediately. Investing required sacrifice. Every stone donut used to buy an asset was a stone donut that could not be spent on something enjoyable today. The following week, Rocky earned 20 stone donuts, just as he usually did. As he walked through the village, he passed a merchant selling beautifully polished stones that many cavemen use as decorations. In the past, Rocky would have bought one without hesitation. He imagined how impressive it would look hanging inside his cave.
But this time, he kept walking. A little farther down the road, he saw a craftsman offering newly designed hunting clubs. Again, Rocky felt tempted. The club looked stronger, larger, and more impressive than the one he already owned, yet he resisted. For the first time, he began asking himself a different question before every purchase. Would this make him richer next year, or would it simply make him feel better today?
That simple question changed everything. Weeks turned into months, and Rocky slowly accumulated more stone donuts than he had ever saved before. It wasn't easy. Every day he found new reasons to spend them. Every day he had to fight the urge to reward himself for his hard work. But eventually, he reached a point where he had enough stone donuts to make his first investment.
The opportunity arrived unexpectedly. Near the center of the village stood a small fish smoking hut owned by an aging fisherman. For many years, the fisherman had used the hut to preserve fish before selling them to travelers passing through the area. The business was simple, but it was reliable. Every week people needed food, and every week the hut generated a modest profit. The fisherman had recently decided he wanted to spend less time working, so he offered to sell part of the business in exchange for stone donuts.
Most villagers ignored the opportunity. They preferred spending their money on things they could immediately enjoy. Rocky nearly ignored it too. The investment seemed small. It wasn't exciting. Nobody would be impressed by owning a small share of a fish smoking hut. Yet, the more he thought about it, the more he remembered Brooks' lesson. Wealth wasn't built by chasing excitement. Wealth was built through ownership.
After several days of thinking, Rocky finally made a decision. He handed over a large portion of his savings and became a partial owner of the business. At first, nothing happened. The next day looked exactly like the day before. The following week felt the same. Even the first month brought little change. Part of Rocky wondered whether he had made a mistake. He had spent months saving stone donuts only to own a tiny piece of a fish business. Compared to buying something exciting, the investment felt disappointing. There were no celebrations, no dramatic changes, no instant wealth.
Then something interesting happened. At the end of the month, the fisherman handed Rocky a small pouch containing a few stone donuts. It wasn't a large amount. In fact, it was less than Rocky earned from a single day of work. But these stone donuts were different. Rocky hadn't hunted for them. He hadn't fished for them. He hadn't spent hours carrying supplies through the wilderness. The business had generated income on its own.
For the first time in his life, Rocky earned money without directly trading his time for it. The amount was small, but the lesson was enormous. Instead of spending those stone donuts, Rocky added them to his savings. A few months later, he used the growing pile to purchase a small ownership stake in a mammoth milk operation. Soon after that, he invested in a storage cave used by merchants traveling between villages. Each asset produced a small amount of income. By itself, none of them seemed particularly impressive. Together, however, they began creating a system.
Slowly, almost invisibly, Rocky's financial life started changing. He still earned stone donuts through labor, but now something else was happening in the background. His assets were producing income as well. Year after year, the gap between Rocky and the average villager continued to grow. Not because Rocky worked harder, not because he got lucky, and not because he discovered a secret shortcut. The difference was that Rocky stopped consuming everything he earned and started owning things that produced value. Without realizing it, he had crossed an invisible line. He was no longer simply a worker, and he was becoming an investor.